In what ways is technology harming students and our youngest adults?
Well, there's a lot of things going on. My research is mostly focused on the mental health effects, particularly anxiety and depression. So, for example, we know that the more hours a day a teen spends using social media, the more likely it is that they'll be anxious or depressed.
And when did this start? Is this something that has tracked along with social media usage?
Yeah, I mean, that's the other piece of it. And that's how I came to be interested in the effects of technology in the first place is I research generational differences and work with these big surveys of teens that had been done since the 1970s. And in the data around 2012, I started to see big changes. More and more teens started to say they felt left out, they felt lonely, they felt like they couldn't do anything right, that their life wasn't useful. And those last two are all classic symptoms of depression. And sure enough, depression doubled among teens between 2011 and 2019 before the pandemic and right at the time that social media and smartphones became really common.
Now, when you say depression doubled, are you talking went from 4% of young people to 8%, or are we talking bigger numbers than that?
In the book, the graph I have is broken down by gender. So for girls, for example, clinical level depression among girls 12 to 17 used to be pretty steady at about 12%. And by 2019, it had doubled to about 24%. So those are pretty big numbers.
That's a quarter of all girls.
Yes,
And these are
exactly.
teenage girls, you said?
Yeah, 12 to 17.
Oh my. Well, when I saw the title of your book, Raising Kids in a High-Tech World, my mind immediately went to social media and to mobile technologies. But you don't limit it to that. And I think you've extended it to porn and to video games as well. What's harming people more? Is it social media? Is it pornography? Is it video games?
It's really hard to say. I did do one analysis that did more of a head-to-head comparison between time spent on social media and time spent on gaming. And time spent on social media was more strongly linked to depression for both girls and boys than gaming was. For pornography, I haven't studied that myself as much. But what I want parents to know is something that I'm embarrassed to say I didn't realize until about a year and a half ago, which is just how incredibly easy it is for kids to see even hardcore pornography online. There's no age verification. There's nothing stopping them except for one little button that says, I am 18, enter. That's it. So if you don't have parental controls and web filtering, your kids can look at pornography that easily, or they may even stumble across it accidentally. So I think we all have to be, more aware of that because I think it just isn't publicized enough how easy that is, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the stumbling upon it happens probably a little bit more than people might realize. You could have
Mhm.
a Google search, for example, that is adjacent to something sexual and then be fed some content. I've heard stories of kids 10, 12, 14 years old
Mhm.
having that sort of experience.
Exactly. So, and I think we have to put this in the context of, I think there's often the assumption of like, oh, but my kids are good. I have a good kid. They're not going to do this. Well, they may stumble across it accidentally. And even good kids are curious, and kids at a certain age are curious about that. And you do not want them learning those things from hardcore pornography or pornography, period. Yes, you want them to learn about sexuality, but not in that environment and not online without you being there to help them understand the ins and outs of these things.
When I saw these three categories, social media, video games, and porn, I thought girls, boys, and boys.
Mm.
But I'm assuming that that's probably too simplistic. What are your thoughts in terms of the gender makeup of these groups?
Well, it is true that girls spend more time on social media than boys do, and boys spend more time on gaming than girls do, and that boys are, a little more attracted to finding pornography because it tends to be made more for boys and men. But these are things that cut across genders. There are girls who are spending way too much time gaming, just like there are boys who do that. Same thing with boys and social media. So I think you have to be aware of all of them. I have three girls myself, so social media is a little bit more front of mind, but I talked to a lot of parents around the country, certainly have lots of friends who have boys, and all three of these are an issue.
When a teenager is hooked on one of these technologies, regardless of what it is, what is happening to their brain development?
So we don't really know yet, and I have to put this in context that I'm not a neuroscientist, but there are a few studies, and the studies, point in the direction basically that the social media lights up the dopamine pathway in the way that pleasurable things generally do. And what that means is it becomes a compulsion or addiction fairly quickly. So that's one of the many dangers, is that it's really hard, even for adults, to put down that phone and stop watching TikTok or stop looking at Instagram. And it's very, very difficult for children and teens because they don't have the self-control that an adult does. And teens are going to look longer at things that are a little out of the ordinary or disturbing or sexual. And what those apps do is then they feed them more content like that. Anything on, like, let's say TikTok that you look at for longer, that's how the algorithm works. It feeds you more of what you spent more time on. And so teens can end up, with a very disturbing looking feed because that's what they're looking longer at. And it's within these feeds are very individualized too. So I think it's hard for some adults to realize that kids' feeds are going to look very different. So maybe you watch cooking videos and that's all you watch on TikTok. Well, that's not what your teenager's feed is going to look like.